crafting a meaningful life.
I'm here with my dear friend, Joel Zuckerman. From a previous podcast, we connected so well that I said, Joel, can you come back and can you talk about this a little bit more? And so, Joel, I'm so excited to have you back today.
Thank you very much, Mary. This is the first time I've ever been invited anywhere twice. I'm talking about homes, parties, restaurants, so I must be doing something right. I've been invited many places once, but this is my my very first encore invitation, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I'll share with you just a little bit about why what you talk about is so important to me. And that is this gift of gratitude. And you talk about just more than gratitude. It's like the how, the why, the when, the what, all those things. And I have a practice of doing my meditation every single morning. And for me, it's a very spiritual thing where I kind of become in touch with my purpose, my vision for life, what messages are there for me. And the one consistent piece of this that happens every single morning, no matter what's going on in my life, no matter what's ahead of me, what just happened last night or whatever, the consistent piece and the consistent message is gratitude. Every single time, even when I'm not thinking about gratitude, the thoughts of gratitude and all the things that I'm grateful for just overwhelm me. And so when I know that's the message that I am getting from all of my spirit guides and from my inner light, and from the higher light, then I know that it must have a critical piece to do with my life here and my life as I go forward. So I'm going to start with that and just ask you to kind of be the interpreter of my meditations.
Well, tell me this. Did you say that you do this in the morning when you get up?
I do.
Okay. And I don't remember. I have not listened to our previous conversation from back in November. So I apologize if I repeat myself, but one of the things I do in my gratitude life is every evening when I get into bed, I do something called Count Your Blessings.
Yeah.
And if I mentioned this when we spoke a few months ago, I'll go through it quickly. When I get into bed, and this is one of the healing physiological benefits of gratitude. Literally, this is a physiological benefit of showing deep gratitude. I get into bed and I recount everything I was grateful for that happened that day chronologically, so you can remember. And I don't mean big things like I'm grateful I have a wife, I'm grateful I have a home. I mean little things such as I'm grateful I had yogurt and fruit for breakfast. I could have had bacon and eggs. I'm grateful I saw Bill at the hardware store. I'm grateful when I pulled into the gas station, a pump magically opened up in front of me. These little moments of grace, when you recount them from the beginning of the day till the end of the day, help calm your nervous system and will help you find sleep more easily. So this is literally a physiological benefit of gratitude. I call it Count Your Blessings. And again, it's not the big things in life. It's going through the little things in your life that you were grateful for, or at the very least, Mary, didn't tick you off that day. Go through everything you did that didn't tick you off that day, and that can help you find sleep more easily.
I think that's so true, Joel, that there are things that could jolt us in our life. But when we don't allow the jolt and we just flow through life, there's this sense of peace within our lives. And a lot of that is something we can be grateful for. We're grateful that we today did not get jolted off when I watched something on the news.
Right.
I can be grateful that I was able to turn that off and say, I choose something different today in my life. And that brought me more peace. It is sometimes those tiny little things.
Well, watching the news is a contact sport these days. The world is difficult, and we've all heard, you've lived this life because you are so in touch with your feminine side and you are such a empowering soul to women. We've all heard the old saw, if the world was run by women instead of by 98% white men, then we
Yeah.
would have less conflict in the world. And to add to that, if people thought, in my opinion, if people thought about gratitude more often, if they thought about being grateful, and we'll get into this more in a minute, proactively grateful, which is my major thrust, my major theme. If people thought more about being proactively grateful, which is just a fancy way of saying if they were able to show gratitude to others on a regular basis, and I mean daily, many times a day, just like if women ran the world would be a better place. That's my sincere belief.
I love that thought that even though we tend to be thought of as the gentler sex or the more compassionate sex, the more aware of interpersonal relationships sex, that it can be taught. It can be. Men can become more aware of their environment. And one of the very first steps in that is that walking into that sense of gratitude and thankfulness for where we are in our lives.
I agree completely. And I want to touch back again on the concept of proactive gratitude. And by
Yes.
proactive gratitude, one of my new favorite sayings, and I use this when I do speaking gigs, is by the author Gertrude Stein. And she said, silent gratitude isn't much good for anybody, which I love because we're all grateful. And I say
Yeah.
this when I speak, when you get a benign medical diagnosis, oh my God, are you grateful? When your kid gets into the first choice of college or grad school or gets a really good job out of school, oh, are you grateful? Everyone is grateful like that. The type of gratitude that will change you is when you share your gratitude. So let me be the first. Mary, I'm glad we've become acquainted. I'm very grateful that you have had me on your podcast, not once, but twice. And when you invite me back this spring for the third time, I'll be really super grateful. So I'm teasing, of course, but I want to express my gratitude to you and expressive. My presentation is called The 7 Pillars of Expressive Gratitude. Like I said, we're all grateful when you avoid a car accident. We're all grateful when the stain comes out of your favorite sweater. That's silly, meaningless gratitude. Real gratitude is when you show it to someone else. And I want to get the ball rolling by sharing my gratitude to you for inviting me onto your podcast.
And I'm grateful that you came on twice. I think that's true. Like, for example, when I talked about being in my meditation and being in that state of I'm always ended with this awe of how grateful I feel for every little piece. But then, and I do this downstairs, kind of by myself in the winter, and I do it out in what I call my sacred garden space outside in the summer. But afterwards, I don't just come in and go on my way. One of the things I'm always grateful for is my partner for John in my life. And I come in and immediately find him. I just want to let you know how grateful I am for you. And it's like, I think sometimes, well, that's going to get old because that's what I said yesterday. But it doesn't get old. He just appreciates it. And that willingness to share those thoughts and feelings of gratitude lift us and embolden us to be more grateful. But then what they do for the other person is completely and utterly amazing.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that point, and it dovetails perfectly into what I'm about to say. If John was a different type of person, if John was snarkier or edgier than he is, I've never met him, but let's say he was a guy with a shorter fuse. than he probably has. He
couldn't be with me then.
Okay. But let's say in this alternate universe, he's a guy who has not a short fuse, but he doesn't tolerate a lot of nonsense. He could be the type of guy who says, all right, Mary, that's great. You said that yesterday. You said that the day before. You said that 2 days ago, a week ago, a month ago. And my point to you is, it doesn't matter how it makes John feel. It makes you feel good. John is, we've all heard the term collateral damage. John's reaction is collateral joy. His reaction doesn't matter. You're doing it for yourself. And that's the secret to gratitude. I express gratitude, as you know, by writing letters.
I love that project.
And thank you. And I've heard from a number of the people. I've now written 235 letters. I've heard from probably 70 or 80 people, which means a lot of people have not responded. Years ago, 6, 8, 10 years ago, that bothered me. Now it doesn't. Why? Because I write the letters primarily for myself. I write the letters because it makes me feel good. And if it makes you, the recipient, feel good, that is collateral joy. I should trademark that phrase, shouldn't I? Collateral joy. But I don't write it for you. I write it for myself. And if you enjoy it, that's just the tinsel on the tree.
Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely. Because there are times, like, for example, after our last podcast, you sent me a handwritten thank you note. And it was so well received. But what do I do instead? I text you. And so that art of writing a thank you note is kind of a lost art here, because the electronic world is so convenient for us.
You are right. And this is the bed that I've made for myself. GratitudeTiger.com. Whether I like it or not, I go to the computer, I pull out the note cards as you received. Someday, if you stay on my good side, you might get an honest to goodness letter of gratitude, but you started with a halfway point. You got a thank you card. Difference being, of course, is a letter of gratitude from me is a typewritten 1-page letter that goes into my archive of letters that began in 2013. But for every letter of gratitude I write at least one, if not two, thank you notes, which of course I wrote to you for having me on the podcast and sending me a copy of your lovely book back in the fall. Now, I don't know you well enough yet to write you the big kahuna, the letter of gratitude, but you did get a thank you note because I just feel when you extend the effort to help me, have me on your podcast, I need to extend the extra effort by getting your address, writing it out, stamp, envelope, mailbox, because that is a nicer, more complete, more ceremonial way of thanking someone beyond. Yeah. Is it easy to send a text or a TikTok or an email? Yeah, I think it is. I'm not going to disagree, but I always feel, not always, but in certain instances, I feel compelled to go that extra mile.
You know, you just sparked an idea inside of me when you said you went to your desk, you took out this, you got this. If I kept a pile of thank you notes, not at my desk, but right in my kitchen, in a drawer where I open all my mail, and just that easy it would be to take out the thank you note. The envelopes are already stamped. They already have my return address on them. And then it would be like a 3-minute deal. And anyone that's worth getting a thank you note certainly is worth 3 minutes.
I'll tell you
That's going to change my life. That's going to change my life. I'm going to get my pile. I'm going to put it there.
Okay.
And I'm going to start writing thank you notes again.
You know, it's interesting. You and I never have a pre-conversation like, okay, we're going to touch on this point or that point. but you just made such an important point that I would like to elaborate on for a moment. Thank you card is a thank you card. I sent you a thank you card, a handwritten thank you. Let's go back to the real deal, which is letters of gratitude. Okay. And this is for your listeners who are not familiar with our previous conversation. Let me just frame it for them quickly. My understanding of gratitude, I don't want to call it an authority. I don't want to call it an expertise, but my unique understanding of gratitude comes because I have written 235 letters of gratitude since the fall of 2013. So a little bit more than 10 years. I've written hundreds of letters to people around my life, and it has given me a certain understanding of gratitude that most people don't. That is how I have come to start speaking about gratitude and how it can help you. But here's the main point when you talk about the 3 minutes. I'm a professional writer, and I'm very effusive, and I'm not afraid to show my feelings. So I am a perfect person to write long, elaborate letters of gratitude, which are typically 6 or 7 paragraphs long. But for those of listeners who would like to extend gratitude to people who are important to them, and they are not as, for lack of a better term, verbose, if they don't have ideas spilling out of both ears like I do much of the time, you can extend gratitude, Mary, I write it in 6 or 7 paragraphs. It can easily be done in 6 or 7 sentences. And for those of you who are taciturn, whose words do not come easily, or you like to keep your feelings close to the vest, you can do it in 6 or 7 words. Let me give you a few examples. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You mean the world to me. Boom. This department wouldn't run without you. Boom. I love you and admire you. Boom. You can do it in 6 words or 6 sentences. I do it in 6 or 7 paragraphs. Or to give you and this is perfect for you, the caterer of the century, say my expertise was as a chef and not a gratitude letter writer. I could show my gratitude to you by preparing you a 6-course meal, right? But I could also show my gratitude to you by preparing a nice grilled cheese or maybe a warm bowl of oatmeal with cinnamon and raisins. It doesn't have to be as elaborate as I do it. You can show deep, meaningful gratitude in 6 sentences and even 6 words.
When I think about it, Joel, you're absolutely right. I have a set already of, 5 or 6 phrases that I use all the time when I'm responding to people on social media about something that they've accomplished or something that they did or how that they retrospected into their lives and took a lesson and learned it. And I actually could have a bunch of cards just with those already on it, and then I could just fill in the second sentence and away they go.
You could. You could go and buy a bird's eye frozen dinner, but it wouldn't be as satisfying as you cooking your loved one a home cooked meal.
Yeah.
I was with a friend last week who he used to debate with me the efficacy of writing letters of gratitude. He goes, "What's the point? Just call someone. Just call them and thank them for what they did for you." And by the way, this gentleman, this friend of mine, has done more for me than I can ever do for him. And I've written him a letter of gratitude and I've written him various thank you notes. And he said to me, I was with him last week down in Palm Desert. And he goes, "Joel, look at this. Have you ever fooled around with the Chat GPT?" I said, "No, I know what it is." He goes,
"Yeah, I haven't either."
"Hey, you haven't either." He says to me,
"No."
He says to me, "Watch this. Write Joel Zuckerman a letter of gratitude. He used to be a golf writer in Savannah, Georgia." And 5 seconds later, there was a kind of a flowery Hallmark card letter that had been written. And I said, Steve, that's so gross. Make it snarky. So he talks into ChatGPT. He goes, write Joel Zuckerman a snarky letter of gratitude. Joel's a golf writer based in Savannah, Georgia. 5 seconds later, it's kind of a sarcastic letter of gratitude. And he shows it to me. I said, Steve, that's great. But where is the self-satisfaction in writing the letter? That's the difference. Let me go back to what I said to you a minute ago. I write letters for myself. ChatGPT could cheat for me, and I could go and say, write Mary Kraft a thank you letter for being on her podcast. She's a woman of influence. And in 2 seconds, I could have something that I could pull the wool over your eyes and mail it to you. But I wouldn't do it because it doesn't come from me.
And you're not achieving the very thing that you said you do this for is for yourself. How does it anymore become for you if it's done through ChatGPT?
I would never do it. So I referred earlier to, my presentation. My main presentation is called The 7 Pillars of Expressive Gratitude. Pillar number one, writing letters of gratitude makes you, the letter writer, feel good. That's not number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. It's number 1. Writing letters of gratitude makes you, the letter writer, feel good. Pillar number 2, it makes the recipient feel good. But that's not pillar number 1. Pillar number 1 is it makes you.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to mess around with ChatGPT, just like you would not make a bird's eye frozen dinner. Where's the effort? Where's the love? Where's the intention in that?
Yeah. Joel, I see this path that you're on. You've written a book now about gratitude. Tell me the name of your book again.
Grateful.
Yeah, Grateful. And you have your website, Grateful Tiger.
Gratitude Tiger.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gratitude Tiger. I've looked it up so many times. I should have that emblazoned in my brain.
People say
but
that.
Now
they say Grateful Tiger, but it's gratitudetiger.com.
.com. But that's not where you started.
No.
And I don't think we talked about this last time. I mean, you were a golfer, you were a pro teacher, you've written lots of books on golfing.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was your world.
It was my world. So I have a varied background. I started off as a salesman in New York. I worked on Wall Street. I had my own business back in New England. And then I was very lucky. In 1997, I got hired to be a golf writer. I had moved south. I got hired to be the golf writer for the Hilton Head newspaper called the Carolina Morning News.
Whoa. Wow.
And I catapulted from my local bully pulpit in the Carolina Morning News into local magazines, regional magazines, airline magazines, national magazines. And then I started writing books. The books came very quickly. 2003, 05, 06, 07, 08, 11, 13, 15. And as my profile.
Wow. And there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of golf books.
I couldn't believe.
Yeah. I had a lot to say at that time. And the point being is that my profile in the golf business allowed me to get hired to speak about golf on cruise ships, corporate retreats, conferences, country clubs. And I slowly, and we don't really have time for this, and it's not really that germane, I started to focus more on gratitude. First of all, the golf business started to wither, the golf writing business. And by the way, think about the magazines that you used to subscribe to that have either gone out of business or they're skinny, right? The best example ever was Sports Illustrated. Used to be 52 weeks a year. Then they went to 26 issues a year. Then they went to monthly. And now Sports Illustrated is out of business. So the golf industry started to wither. And I started focusing more on gratitude. And about a year ago or so, a year, maybe 18 months, I realized that my natural ability to speak very clearly, very succinctly to an audience could be well served by talking about gratitude the way I used to talk to audiences about Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Gary Player. Only a tiny percentage of the world cares about golf, but everyone should care about gratitude. So now I speak to groups about gratitude, but with the same passion, the same fervor, the same humor, the same uplifting, I like to think, delivery that I used to speak about golf. Now I try to teach people to be proactively grateful.
Okay. So now get ready for the hard question.
Okay.
You talked about this part, about the golf. And then you talked about this part, the gratitude. I want you to zero in to that moment when you decided that the golf was no longer going to be your future, that was full in your past, and you knew you were going to shift. You knew that a new direction was on the line for you. Because of your experience, you could have talked about motivating yourself to a new level. You could have talked about being aware of the things around. I mean, there's any number of things that you learned from watching professional pro golfers and in your own life that you could have talked about. Now,
well, that's
why?
Good. Yeah.
You know, but the question is then, why gratitude?
Okay. Very good. I'm never at a loss for words. You got me there. 5 seconds of silence is 4 seconds too many. All right.
No, I actually love it when people stop and think.
So here's what happened.
The moment. Yeah.
In November of 2013, I picked up a self-help book, the only one I've ever looked at, called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. Very famous. 30 million copies out the door. And one of the little chapters, short chapters, 2 pages, 3 pages long, said, write a heartfelt letter. So in 2013, I was very busy writing books, planning books, promoting books, magazine work. I looked at it as an intellectual exercise. I said, I'm going to write a heartfelt letter. In my mind, Mary, I changed the title of the chapter from Write a Heartfelt Letter to Write a Letter of Gratitude. It wasn't until I looked at the book again a year later, I realized the actual chapter title was Write a Heartfelt Letter. I thought it was Write a Letter of Gratitude. Anyway, I wrote a letter that day to a colleague, a friend, a mentor, someone in the golf business who had helped me. He had introduced me to editors, got me assignments. Most importantly, he had taken me on at least a dozen or 15 press trips around the nation and beyond. And I said, I'm going to write Dan Shepard. And I wrote him a letter of gratitude. I got his email. I got his address. I emailed or texted him, typed it out, envelope, stamp, mailbox. And when I put it in the mailbox, I was taken aback by how it made me feel. It made me feel warm and accomplished. At that moment, Mary Crafts, I never thought I would write a second letter. I did it as an intellectual exercise, like, hey, I'm a writer. I'm creative. I can write a heartfelt letter, and I'm going to do it today. And I did. I knocked out a letter in 20 minutes telling Dan that I was grateful to him for his friendship, all his help in my career. And I never thought anything of it. If you had told me in that November, a week or 10 days before Thanksgiving of 2013, that I would eventually have written 235 similar letters of gratitude, had a podcast called Mostly Grateful, written a book called Grateful, had a website called gratitudetiger.com, I never would have believed you. So that's a long-winded way of saying I started writing letters slowly, sometimes 2 a week, sometimes 2 a month. And as the golf industry started to dry up, as opportunities started to wither on the vine, I started to concentrate more on how being grateful, proactively grateful, made me feel. And I wrote the book Grateful in 2020. And then I realized a year or so later, maybe 18 months, I could speak about gratitude with a certain degree of authority because of all the letters I've written. It's a very unique thing that I've done and continue to do. to write letters to people, to share my feelings of gratitude and appreciation towards them. And I can speak to an audience and tell them what it is like internally to show gratitude to others and how it makes you feel good. And I'm trying to spread this message to the wider world.
I love that. That just with an experiment, because the gauntlet was thrown down by a book that you read.
Yeah.
And then you realized how you felt. And at that moment, I think you must have come to the conclusion that this was less about what they would write back or reciprocate and much more about how you felt to be able to express this to them.
It took me a while. It took me a while, when people didn't respond.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that.
How come
heartbreak.
How come I haven't heard back from this person? Anyway, and I want to make it very clear that my golf writing career and my interest in gratitude were concurrent for a number of years. I wrote my first letter in 2013, and I didn't get out of the golf biz till about 2018. So those first 4 or 5 years, I was writing letters occasionally, still working in the business. But then I decided that I had said all I was ever going to say about golf. I don't know if I wrote 1 million words or 2 million words. I've got eight golf books that average 300 pages each.
Wow.
And I wrote for 120 different magazines once to 100 times or 200 times. So there's no way, and I'm kind of a quantifier. I would like to know how many words, how many trees died, how many vats of ink were spilled with my bloviating about golf. Who knows? I did it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I still love the game, but I realized that I had a higher calling, and I realized that my last professional act would be to spread this message of proactive gratitude to audiences that want to improve their equanimity, their physiological being, their well-being, their emotional balance. And that's what I'm doing now.
So as we wrap this up, I have one more question. And this is going to be it.
Hopefully I have one more answer.
I think you do. So I've watched on your website, I've watched all your sizzle reels of how great you are in front of audiences and how you can, really get them laughing. You're very funny on your videos and in your speeches. And afterwards people feel, oh, I love this talk, and so on and so on. And I'm feeling more grateful already about everything. I mean, I listen to all the people talking about you, how fabulous you are.
Right.
What I want to know is, you said this is probably your last step into the professional world. And you're not as old as me, but that's not that far away, Joel. And the question I want to ask is, what has this deep dive into gratitude changed inside of you that will see you through the rest of your life?
Wonderful question. You have kind of a sixth sense of asking the question that helps me launch into another talking point that while we were talking, I might have easily forgotten. So, you can be grateful and you can be snarky. You can be grateful and you can be edgy. You can be grateful and you can be difficult. Okay? None of us are perfect beings. I have all of those negative qualities and more. Too bad we don't have more time. I could give them to you alphabetically.
I'll call you later.
Call me later. So my point is that gratitude is one manifestation of who I am. You ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm a prickly pear. I'm a troubled soul. I'm not making myself out to be the Dalai Lama. I'm not making myself out to be Nelson Mandela. I am a guy who's got the same frustrations, animosities, resentments, and regrets as every human being on the planet, yourself included. And I know you try to live a very righteous life. And I know you do a
Oh, I don't
lot.
like that word. Not righteous. I try and live a very spiritual life.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Fine. Doesn't matter. The point I'm making is everyone has at least two sides, if not many sides. So I try to emphasize the fact that I'm grateful. Earlier in our conversation, we talked about counting your blessings. You do it in the morning. I do it when I get into bed at night. But I try to be grateful in every circumstance I'm in, just for a moment, just for a couple of seconds. I'm grateful the traffic is moving. I'm grateful that I got to see my grandchildren. And the letter writing is a manifestation of my deep gratitude. And the reason that I write letters is because I'm a professional writer and it comes easily to me, but I don't want to make it out like I am some holier than thou person. I'm the same jackass that you saw on the street today, in the supermarket, at the gas station. I just emphasize as often as I can that I try to be grateful. And again, I have to emphasize one more time, proactively grateful, expressively grateful, not grateful in my heart, not grateful in my mind, grateful to you, Mary Crafts. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I say to my wife, thank you for this delicious dinner. So where is it leading me? I hope I can continue to improve as a person, but I'm always going to be the same difficult person. We all have a degree of difficulty. Your future husband, John, seems like he's not too difficult from what I've seen on social media.
He's not. He's the best.
Nobody's calling me the best, but I try amongst all my flaws and faults to be grateful. And specifically, as I've mentioned more than once, by writing letters to let people know that they mean something important to me. That's the gist of
And
it.
that is your mark of greatness.
I know about
That's what
greatness,
people,
but at least grateful.
I think that people obviously are going to remember you for your golf. You made long contributions deep into the golf world. However, you as a person, they're going to remember for something different, perhaps a little snarky, but always with a grateful heart.
I try, and I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you saying that. It's so lovely to talk to you again, and I sincerely appreciate the encore appearance on
Yeah.
on crafting a.
Meaningful life.
I didn't want to say the wrong word. I was going to say wonderful, spiritual,
Meaningful.
crafting a
Meaningful.
meaningful life.
Because in my opinion, if it's meaningful, then it's everything else.
Yeah.
You're grateful for it. It's a wonderful life. It's spectacular. It's full of joy. It's full of struggle and growth. If you focus on it being meaningful, all of the rest of that comes along.
Meaningful is the umbrella. I get it.
For me.
Yeah.
Joel, thank you so much for being on this podcast. All those links will be at the end of the podcast, where to buy his book, where to watch his sizzle reel, because I know you're going to want to do that if you're thinking about hiring Joel to come and be a motivational speaker for your company, and all the things that are up front of Joel. He's like me. He's not just going to fade into existence. He's going to go kicking and screaming and shouting the word gratitude the rest of his life.
I think that's a fair summation. I appreciate that.
I love it.
Kicking and screaming.
Oh, Joel, thank you so much.
Mary.
And may the biggest joys be to you.
Same to you. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right now. Namaste.
Namaste.
Crafting a meaningful life.